Let's move on to speaking part 3. An overview. Part 3 is about 4 minutes, and this is a discussion with the examiner. It's a conversation. So whereas in part 2, the examiner is not asking you any questions, you are just speaking, giving a speech. In part 3, the examiner is asking you questions, and you are both sharing opinions, and these are probably on more advanced topics compared to part 1. Remember, part 1 was about you. Well, part 3 is about society, or about the future, or about something that's more advanced than simply talking about yourself or your hobbies. And typically, the topics in part 3 are based on your part 2 presentation. If in part 2 your question was about pets or animals, then in part 3 the examiner might have a conversation with you about the importance of animals in society, or endangered species, or something related to animals. On part 3, speak at length, but stay on topic. This is very important advice. Yes, you should give extended answers. Of course, just like the entire test, you don't say yes or no. You need to give extended answers that includes details. But don't get carried away. Always stay on topic. Let's practice this question. Are computers good for education? Yes, I think computers are good for education because they allow people to look things up on the internet and discover new ideas, and to do so quickly. They can look up more information than before. So I think computers really help education. Do you notice how I stayed on topic? I wasn't just talking about computers, I was talking about both computers and how they're good for education. Here's an example of a bad answer. Are computers good for education? Yeah, computers are great. I love playing games on my computer, especially the game where you shoot deers and you shoot elephants and you're like a hunter and you shoot animals. Oh, I love that game. Now that's a bad answer because you're only talking about computers and not how they're good for education. So you're not staying on topic. In part 3, the most important advice I have for you is to stay on topic. Really listen to that question. Now I want to give you some phrases for the remainder of our slides in part 3. And these are phrases you can use to introduce new ideas and to link ideas. And I'll give you some examples of these in sentences. Okay, so first, presenting your point of view. So these are all phrases that are great for you to practice in giving your point of view. Let's look at the practice question down below. Do elderly people play the same games as young people? Now I'm going to answer that by using these phrases, starting with the first one. I think that elderly people do play the same games as young people. They all play music. Young or old, everybody loves to play musical instruments. So if you're agreeing with the statement, then you could use that phrase, I think that. But what if you disagree? Well, you could say, I don't think that elderly people play the same games as young people. Young people play more active games like sports, and I don't see very many elderly people playing football. Maybe it's because they are too sick to play, or their bones ache too much, or they're just not fast enough. Look at the third word or phrase. It says, personally, this you can use when you're stating your opinion. You could say, personally, I have never seen an elderly person playing a video game. I believe elderly people and younger people play mostly the same games. I guess they play different games, but I don't really know what older people play because I only spend time with young people. As far as I know, old people don't play games. As far as I know. This shows your limited experience. Maybe you don't really spend any time with elderly people. You could say, as far as I know, they don't do anything fun. Or if you're really confident, you could say, I am convinced that elderly people only play games in the water. So they play cards in the water, and they play, bowling in the water, and everything. They do it in the water. I personally think that elderly people are the ones who teach games to the young people, so they must play the same ones. I suppose they play the same games, but I really don't know. I'd say they play some of the same games, but elderly people probably know the older games that young people don't know. Explaining reasons why, if you know why. Let's look at our practice question. Why are people today getting married later than before? It's probably because people are growing up much slower than before. People are playing video games, and before they were working at very young ages, so they grew up quickly, and so they got married because they felt like adults at young ages, maybe even in their teens. People are getting married later than before. In fact, I've heard that most people don't get married until they're in their 30s. One of the reasons for this could be that they are wealthier, and so they don't need to have two incomes. Well, people are getting married later. What this means is that they won't have as many children compared to before when they started younger. Speculating why, if you're not sure why. Look at the practice question below. What kinds of jobs will people have in the future? People might have jobs with robots, or they might have jobs with computers. Maybe everybody will. Perhaps nobody will have any job because the robots will take all of the jobs and everybody will be rich. It's not likely that people will stop working. Maybe the jobs will change, but it's not likely that people will stop working, no matter what the technology does. It's very unlikely that people will have the same kinds of jobs they have today. Because of technology and computers, maybe most people will be in high tech. It's very likely that people will travel more frequently in the jobs of the future because the economy is becoming more and more globalized every year. Giving examples. When you're giving an example of something happening, you can always just say, for example. Another thing you can say is, for instance. Or just change your phrase. Say, an example of that is adding new ideas. Also, and. Moving to the next point. Anyway, so, to move on, make sure you go back through these slides and practice answering questions by using these introducing and linking ideas I've provided in this lecture.